Hello again. Marilyn here with Stamping Creations with Marilyn. I am sharing my third card with you today. And this one, as you can see, is black and white with a splash of color. I have used, once again, the one we are focusing on, the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set, the large stamp by itself. For the words, the congratulations as well as today is great are both from Happy Thoughts. I have used the butterfly filigree dies, so I've used that for my green there. I have used this largest die, and I'll show you the trick I did with that one, out of Stitch Shapes. And I have done some embossing with white embossing powder. So let's get started. Just leave the card there so you can see. I started with my base, which is 11 by 4 1/4. Fold it in half. Tools across the room at a different table. So this one's going to stand this way, which is a little bit different again. So just showing you a variety of different things you can do. Then for this white background piece, that's where I used that die. I'm going to put this back here, but I thought, well, there's no sense wasting all of that. So I cut this out, and that will go in my stash of pieces so I can use it at a later date. Then it came to doing my embossed layer. Now, I did start out with, I don't know where it is now, a piece of black, this size, which is our next layer. And the downfall that I found with it, using the Stamparatus, because I want to use the Stamparatus in case I have to stamp a second time with my ink, my Versamark ink, the downside of that is the stamp is larger than this piece of cardstock. Therefore, I cannot use the magnet to hold it on the Stamparatus and have difficulty stamping it twice. So, I guess I'm going to leave my card base. What I have done, bring in my Stamparatus so you can see it. And I have cut a piece of cardstock bigger than my stamp. Try and get it all on the screen here. So the stamp is not quite 6 by 6, but close. I have cut my cardstock at 5.5 by 6. And by doing that, I can put my magnet on there to hold it, because I did have to stamp it twice when I did that one. I used the embossing buddy to try, especially with white on black, to try and keep my embossing powder where I want it. And yes, we cannot, or no, we cannot buy those from Stampin' Up! Anymore, but I understand there are some available in various other places, or you might still have one. So I used my Versamark. Sorry for the jiggling, but I do need to make sure it gets inked. I find when I use ink pads like this, I keep my lid there so I can just put it there, and I'm going to stamp my image. A big stamp again, I'm going to push on it to hold it down, and I can see the Versamark, and to me it looks like it's covered, so I'm going to move that out of the way and bring in my white embossing powder, which I keep in one of these dishes, and I can, instead of using a spoon, I do have one here, but I find this gets coverage a lot better, is just by dipping it, I'll call it. And a little bit more on that side. Maybe there wasn't quite the right amount of ink there. But again, a little bit bigger piece to be dealing with, but try to get the excess off. And then I'm going to bring in my heat tool, and I have a clip with a piece of foil around a piece of cardboard actually, to hold when I am embossing. So I'll talk a little bit louder. The heat tool I will hold in one place until it starts to melt the embossing powder. No use moving it back and forth or whatever. It's going to work just as well by doing this. And there you can see the white start to brighten. So once that's working, you know that it won't take long to go over the whole image. And get a nice bright white set of butterflies. Not that I'm doing it on this particular card, but just for information, if you were to do this, say, on white cardstock with white embossing powder, then you could use your blending brushes or your sponges to add color over it. And it's called Emboss Resist, and your background would then be colored. No sense doing it on here because the background's black and it wouldn't show. And that wasn't what I was aiming for with this particular card. So because this stamp and paper is larger than the size I want, once I get this done, I can cut it, trim it down to the right size, and have the butterflies wherever I want them. So can you see? All of that is, ouch. It does get warm. Oh, that piece is not done. So when you're doing embossing, heat embossing like this, still one of my favorite techniques, you do want to angle it in the light so you can see if it's all done or not. And I can shut that off. The other thing, besides this cardboard that I have got, a friend of mine had mentioned using just another one of our Rubbermaid kind of bins and putting it for the smaller pieces and just laying it in there, and you don't get burnt, and it also works well for the embossing. So there is my embossed piece that's going to go on there, and I want it to be cut at 5 by 3 3/4. The other way you can tell if it's all done is if it's not rough. If it's rough, by the time you find out it's rough, it will be coming off on your fingers, and that's not very good. So I have cut out of vellum. Instead of the green, I'm going to be putting this just in vellum over top. So I do want all of that, as much as possible of that butterfly. So that's going to be my starting point, is to cut it right to the edge because there is white there. Then I need it 4 inches this way. No, 3 3/4 inches this way. So that is going to cut off a piece of those. This one has to be 5 inches. So again, I'm going to trim just wherever I think, and 5 inches there. Now that to me is so much easier than trying to pardon me. This is one that I did with just the right size, and you can see that I should have had more ink on it so that it would stick with the coloring better. So there will be my piece that goes on for the inside and for the words. I do have Memento ink, my favorite black ink. And I'm going to hopefully stamp, yes, on this little tiny piece. And that will go on my black after it dries. And then for this, I did have another set of words from that. And with the larger one, I will always turn it over to ink it. And make sure I've got the right orientation of my card. So I will place it there. So that's all the stamping. And now we can put our card together. To tie that particular one in, I did put the piece of designer paper at the bottom. I don't think I will on this one, just at the moment anyway, because I'm using the vellum. I'm going to use regular glue on my regular liquid glue, not necessarily regular, on my greeting. Whoops. And then I will use dimensionals to put that on. And for the rest of the card, I will also work with this. So that is going to be my inside layer. That is one thing about embossing, that the powder kind of gets all over. You certainly don't want to turn on your heat tool and point it at your dish of embossing powder. That would not be a good one. So for this, normally I would put my adhesive on the back, but because this has a hole in it, I don't want it sticking all over my paper. So I'm going to do it like that and place this on it. And over just a little bit. You see how that liquid glue allows me to do that for just a couple minutes. Then I'm going to use dimensionals to put it on there. So I need my larger ones, which I will put one in each corner and a couple in the middle, just so it doesn't sag. And I will put dimensionals on my congratulations as well. And my butterfly is going to go on with, now, normally I would put it on with glue dots or liquid glue. With vellum, it is going to show. And I want this just kind of down here near the bottom. So I'm going to try something really different here. I'm going to put that on. Because it's white, I don't think it's a big deal that it's no, I think it's fine because it's white. If it was on a different color, if this was white, not white at the back, it would show, but I really like that. I like both of them. I did have another one cut out that fits on this one, but of course I'll save it in my container of butterflies that I'm collecting. So there you go. One more idea to do with your butterfly set.